with the board's bylaws, delegations have up to 10 minutes to address the board. Any exception to this rule require a majority vote. All remarks are to be confined to the issue you are addressing, and discourteous language, reference to personalities, or statements contravening the Ontario Human Rights Code or the Charter of Rights and Freedoms will not be tolerated. At the beginning of your presentation, the timer will be set for 10 minutes. When 9 minutes have passed, I will advise you that you have 1 minute remaining to bring your comments to a close. Following each presentation, trustees will have an opportunity to ask only questions of clarifications relating to your remarks. If they don't have any questions, there will be no comments made. If the item you are addressing is listed on the agenda, which it is, then trustees will discuss the matter at the appropriate time. Okay, so just to remind everyone that there will be no reference to personalities tonight. Okay, or any delegation. The first delegation is Suhaila Salah.
This one? Okay.
Yes, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to all of us coming here today to speak on the issues that we've been experiencing in our schools today. I'd like to start by acknowledging the students' courage to come out and speak during these dire times to advocate for our collective values, needs, and human rights. My name is Suhaila. I'm the operations officer for a local nonprofit called Sporas, with our aim to empower Palestinian youth diaspora to become active community leaders and build bridges between the Palestinian diaspora and other communities. Canadian culture is renowned for its mosaic, inclusive community. However, when it comes down to the Palestinian heritage, youth are voluntold to silence and self-censor that part of themselves. While there might be policies that were put in place to protect our students, there's a clear discrepancy between the intended outcome and what is the reality of the students are experiencing. Such cases of a grade 7 student that was told that they're not allowed to hang up their artwork with the rest of their class because it was a map of Palestine. And the quote, the teacher said it was make other people feel uncomfortable. Or the case of a teacher that gets side-eyed when she walks down the halls from other teachers and her peers when she decides to wear the kufiya. But she continues to wear this because she sees the appreciation from the minority students. And you will hear more disheartening statements such as these from our students today. We as educators need to understand the state that of our schools and our students and teachers. The level of censorship, surveillance, and discrimination that our students face every day should be a priority to be addressed. In November 2023, the school board staff met with the students in the community. Students felt an immense appreciation for that meeting because they felt heard and acknowledged. However, this behavior is not being mirrored by their staff and the teachers and the administration in their schools that interact directly with students on a daily basis. We recognize the efforts that many are putting at the board and are actively working to support Palestinian students' well-being. However, those efforts have not been translated into students' daily interactions and experiences. Students in the classrooms are not yet meeting the board's stated values of creating a safe environment for all students. If the efforts are great and in a proactive, positive direction, but the administration and teachers are disciplining students unjustly and censoring them in an academic setting, this will brand their experience with the school system. Their relationship with the administration, their relationship with their teachers, in turn, will also be branded for the rest of their academic careers. As a board, you have the authority to revisit the human rights and the harassment policies to include the need for a mandatory Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian racism training and how this can inform disciplinary action. We're here to encourage you as the board to follow the footsteps of the Toronto District School Board as well as the Hamilton District School Board in revising current policies and addressing the ongoing unjust discrimination the students are facing. I want to spend the rest of my time right now to reading out anonymous teacher statements. And before I read these statements, I want each of us to reflect on why students and teachers feel the need to submit anonymous statements and not come and speak for themselves. Teacher number 1. To whom it may concern, I'm an EA who has been working with the board for around 3 years. I was born in the West Bank in Palestine. I have experienced ethnic cleansing and apartheid under the hands of the Israeli occupation firsthand. The situation in Palestine is on the top of my mind right now, as I have relatives and friends who have lost and still are losing tens of their family members. I more specifically have a Canadian Palestinian friend who lost 80 members of her family. I'm concerned the way that the board handles the secondhand trauma that staff and students have ties to Gaza are going through. The board reacted only when the Israeli side were the victims of the recent attack. I want to bring to your attention according to the United Nations, that at least 172 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank and Israel between January and September 2023. We feel that we are treated as subhuman, and that the board does not provide support or attention to the conflict if the victims are Palestinian. The genocide happening in Gaza is affecting me tremendously. I don't feel the board promotes inclusivity and equity. The board teaches only historical genocides and fails to address what's happening at the moment. My feelings are not acknowledged. I hide my rage and tears behind closed doors. I was not offered any kind of support or words of empathy from my colleagues. I started to have my lunch breaks in my car, and I avoided social interactions with other staff. Staff talk openly about the Holocaust, indigenous ethnic cleansing, the Ukraine war, but when it comes to Palestinians, almost everyone in my school pretends that nothing is happening. As a result, I feel that my people are invisible and there are only faceless statistics. I don't feel that I belong anymore. If I, as an adult, feel this way, I cannot help but wonder how difficult this must be for students and how unsafe they must feel. I think our principals and leaders in the board have to be trained on how empathy and acknowledging emotional upheavals that of the employees may be facing. One of the staff in my school expressed support and sympathy, but told me that she heard of people losing their jobs because of their advocacy for Palestine. She prefers that we have this conversation after work. Why do staff have to feel that need to hold back on supporting another colleague? Why do I fear of speaking up about my people's daily suffering? Why am I scared of facing more alienation? I don't believe that employees who are suffering as a result of this atrocity have any practical tools to deal with stress. Similarly, only the tool our colleagues have to support us in avoidance. Teacher number 2. I am writing to share my experience as a teacher who's a visible Muslim of color in the Waterloo Region District School Board. It was always the element of pride to be a part of the great school where teachers and students have very strong relationships. Teachers are very welcoming. When I first started as a full-time teacher, and our relationships as a teacher's body continued to grow. However, since the Palestinian-Israeli conflict arose as a main theme in conversations, I quickly found myself to be isolated and alienated. Teachers would be discussing the conflict. As soon as I step into the room, the conversation goes silent. Teachers judging and assuming my thoughts on the topic, not feeling comfortable to discuss such topics with me is very concerning for a few reasons. Firstly, as a teacher, we should be role models for students on the importance of benefit, open, respectful dialogue. Secondly, this situation proves that teachers are not equipped to have sensitive conversations. This leads to creating an environment of alienation and hostility, more so impacting the relationships between teachers and students. Lastly, we as teachers who are deeply impacted by this gruesome acts of Palestinians do not feel we have an outlet or support mechanisms to share our feelings or thoughts deeply affecting our mental health. I request that the school board and union send the statement that acknowledges the impact of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict on our Palestinian and Palestinian allied teachers, staff, and students. In addition, share resources and plan for mediated circles to create a safe space to have sensitive conversations. Last statement, I'm a teacher at the Waterloo District School Board. A few Muslim students came to me recently to tell me of something that happened in their class. The students were visibly upset and distressed. Through the tears, the students shared with me that they were not allowed to present their speeches to the class. They have been excited to share their speeches as they wrote about topics they cared about. One of the speeches was about Palestine, and the others was about the other wars and made reference to Palestine. The teacher did not give them any feedback and simply silenced the students by not allowing them to present the speeches that they worked on hard. The students then spoke to administration and to confirm the teacher's reaction by telling the students that they may not present their speeches. I believe that the teacher's role should include guiding students and providing a valuable feedback to improve their work, something that the students certainly needed. They did not receive that from their teacher as they were simply shut down. Through my training and learning at the Waterloo District School Board, we were told that schools should be a place where all students feel seen, heard, respected, and have all the support and resources they need to flourish. Our board's stated aim is to foster an anti-oppressive, anti-racist, and inclusive culture at the Waterloo District School Board. However, these students certainly did not feel seen, heard, respected, or supported in this situation. They were all instead silenced, censored, and not given the support they need to process what they were experiencing. They were also not supported in the learning, as they were simply shut down instead of receiving constructive feedback. I understand that teachers and administrations may feel that it is easier to shut down difficult conversations than to have them. However, this directly contradicts with our stated aim, as it takes away student voice. As an educator, I understand that silencing is a form of oppression, and students do not feel safe in our spaces if they are intimidated into silence.
1 minute.
If we truly want to foster an anti-oppressive, anti-racist, and inclusive culture at the Waterloo District School Board where all students feel seen, heard, and respected, we should ensure that staff administrations are trained in anti-Palestinian racism. We should empower students' voices and support students in their learning by providing them with the guidance and tools to be able to have difficult conversations. We should have protected the rights of the students to speak about topics that are relevant to their lives without using our power to censor or silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustees, are there any questions of clarification? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for your delegation. Murra?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mira and I am a grade 12 student of WRDSB. I was born here in Canada and have lived here all my life. I am a Canadian citizen by birth, but I am Palestinian by blood. Although I am lucky enough to be given this opportunity to live in a developed country, that does not mean I am not affected by the monstrosities my people have been facing for decades. The difference in geographical location cannot be used to assume that I do not face any emotional pain from witnessing what is happening to my people. Although I, among the other members of the community here, are in an indescribable amount of emotional pain, we are not afraid to speak up about the discrimination we are facing. Many people are not able to do so, and instead hide how they feel due to the fear of facing consequences for expressing their opinions. In the third week of October, my school's Muslim Student Association Club had a spirit day, where we could wear the khufiyah to signify our culture. When I was encouraging one of my friends to wear one, she said she was too scared to, because she didn't want to get in trouble. She had felt unsafe enough to wear a scarf at school that she felt she would face consequences for doing so. There is a reason she felt unsafe, especially due to many incidents happening to other students and civilians in the United States and Canada, like the story of Wadia al-Fayoum, the 6-year-old boy who was stabbed to death for being Palestinian. Hearing how people's lives are being taken and people's futures are ruined after openly showing support against the genocide of our people and not being given any form of reassurance by our schools is appalling and does not make us feel any more comfortable discussing this issue at our schools. On October 11th, I was informed that my friend's aunt's house got bombed that morning and she had a younger cousin stuck under the rubble. That news unleashed the tears I had been holding in for the past few days, and nothing made them stop. I had been wearing a scarf that said Palestine on it, and only one of my teachers had come up to ask how I was doing and proceeded to go into conversation with me about the conflict. The conversation was very civil and the political views did not matter. What mattered was checking up on a student who was visibly upset and knew the reason why. He not only approached me, but he went out of his way to approach my brother as well. After this interaction, I asked myself, why haven't my other teachers or vice principals or guidance counselors spoken to me? Checking up on a student regarding a topic like this does not need to result in a political debate. Providing a Palestinian student with the same resources as any other student who is upset is not something that needs to be questioned. You do not need to be informed on a topic, and you do not need to have a side to show your support for the student themselves, because at the end of the day, the political views do not matter. They are still students of WRDSB and should still be given the opportunity of a safe and inclusive environment as any other student. There was an incident at my school involving 3 students, 2 non-Palestinians and an Israeli student. The 2 non-Palestinian students had been having a private conversation about the situation when the Israeli student overheard and stated that she believes all Palestinians are human savages and that the killing of Palestinian civilians is justified to provide safety for the Israeli civilians. This had made the other 2 students feel unsafe, and when they brought this to the principal, the only repercussion the student faced was to speak to a social worker to learn more about empathy. She was not forced to apologize and she was not punished. Instead, she was given an outlet for her trauma and suffering. I, on the other hand, had made a post stating how I do not feel comfortable being friends with someone who does not support the freedom of my people, and had said that if you disagree with my opinions, then to remove me off social media. That post made 2 students who I've never spoken to before feel threatened. I was called out of class to talk with my vice principal, where I was told to censor my posts, give warnings whenever I wanted to say anything, to protect the feelings of my Jewish and Israeli classmates, and publicly apologize for the pain I caused the students. I was not given any resources or support. The comparison of these 2 events and how the staff responded is unacceptable. Many conversations about the genocide have taken place in the school hallways, where staff members have overheard and said that these conversations should not be taking place in such a public area. This makes us feel oppressed and silenced and treated less than any other student, just because of our nationality and opinions. Instead, staff members should join in on the conversation and make us feel equal and comfortable enough to speak our minds without worry. At the WRDSB meeting in November, I was one of the students who was given a chance to speak about my experience. While giving my speech, I finally understood how it felt to be heard. I did not need to censor my thoughts, and I was free to say what I had been wanting to say for weeks, all while knowing everyone in that room was listening. I did not need to worry about being penalized for what I said. I didn't have to keep checking over my shoulder in case someone was listening and could get me in trouble. I felt supported and I felt heard, and this is how all Palestinians are supposed to feel at our schools. Palestinians should be able to express themselves and receive the resources we need. I am not the only student who has been facing issues like this. I would like to share the statements of 2 other students with similar experiences who are not able to come to speak at this meeting today. Student number 1. For the past 5 months, I have woken up every morning to worse news than the day before. Seeing people who look like me and speak the same language as me being slaughtered and ethnically cleansed daily. My social media is filled with the news of hospitals being bombed and infants in incubators dying because the occupation cut off electricity. I see my family and friends struggling to do their day-to-day tasks as their mind is preoccupied if their families made it out alive from the last airstrikes. I am struggling with survivor's guilt, that I can put my head on a physical pillow at night and know that I will wake up in a safe home, while others are sleeping in wet, cold tents. On Monday, November 6th, I wore a pin to school saying, "Until liberation and return." I went to my geography class where my teacher was sitting at her desk. I had gone to ask her a question. She answered, then followed up with, "I am concerned about your pin, though. The administration labeled it as anti-Semitic, and you either need to take it off or go down to the office." I ended up taking it off because my mom was worried I was subjected to violence. It's not fair that my parents constantly worry about whether I will be discriminated against in a school environment. The pin meant that we want the right to live freely on our land. That land can be shared with whatever race or ethnicity as long as we live with dignity and equality, and was in no way intended to be offensive. Our schools call for peace, but the way I have experienced this version of peace is by having my rights as a student taken away. You are taking away my safety to state my beliefs in the one place I thought would be inclusive to all identities and heritages. As a board, you have the influence on our administration. Share resources with them to understand our struggle and be open to listen to us. Understand that Palestine is in my roots, and as a Canadian Palestinian, I want to express both my identities freely with your support, not fearing academic consequences. Student number 2. I am a Palestinian and a student of WRDSB. Attending school as a Palestinian Canadian in the current political climate is without a doubt a very tough experience. As a student and as an individual, I am very outspoken and expressive when it comes to my beliefs, no matter the topic. In regard to the current situation in Palestine, numerous times I have been asked to provide my opinion and insight on what has happened, both by students and by staff. I have always felt comfortable doing so. I would openly explain both current and past events, and I would take the time to describe the situation as objectively as possible. In all those conversations, I never had a negative reaction, nor did anyone take offense to what I said. Walking away from those conversations, I felt that it had been a positive experience. However, each and every time I talked about issues regarding my country and background, it has always been expressed to me by other students, both Palestinian and non-Palestinian, that I should be careful what I say, or that I should remember it's a school, when having discussions of that nature. I began to understand that those warnings did not come from a place of intent to silence me. Those warnings came from a place of genuine concern. Those warnings stemmed from the feeling that Palestinians in the WRDSB are not in a healthy enough environment to express themselves. Those warnings showed me that when I speak about my background, my political opinions, and my family's experience, that I am taking a risk. I am doing something that could get me in trouble, and I am doing something I should think twice about before doing. I believe that if we put enough effort in, and if we are proactive in our approach to this issue, we can make a change. If we educate our staff and students on the dangers and effects of anti-Palestinian racism, further empower the identity and diversity of our students, and encourage global citizenship, we can create a learning environment where all students and staff feel comfortable and accepted. If we recall the proactive approach our board took to the discrimination Indigenous peoples faced here in Canada, it is a reminder that change is possible. Palestinian students like me should feel equal and welcomed in the places that they learn. And I believe that is possible if the school board were to provide these resources to staff and students.
Thank you for your delegation. Trustees, are there any questions? Clarifications? Being none, thank you again for your
Thank you.
delegation this evening, Ms. Murra. Ayah Hamaoui, did I pronounce that correctly?
Hello, my name is Ayah, and I'm here on the behalf of the Palestinian Youth Movement, a grassroots and transnational independent organization of Palestinian and Arab youth organizing for the liberation of Palestine. Bombs have been raining on Gaza day in and day out for the past 128 days with the intent of nothing short of genocide. The death toll now exceeds 30,000 and many are still under the rubble. Over 30,000 Palestinians who will never see the faces of their loved ones again because of the crimes of the Israeli occupation. Entire families have been erased from the Gaza Civil Registry. Churches, hospitals, mosques, schools, and places of refuge have been intentionally targeted. We are witnessing these atrocities in front of our eyes in real time. On our phones, our screens, social media, for the first time in our lives, we're witnessing a genocide being live broadcasted. But it's not just us seeing these traumatic sights unfold, it's also our children and our students. Over 13,000 children have been killed in Gaza in the matter of 3 months. This is the same number of all the students in the public school in the city of Waterloo. Imagine losing every single student, all 13,000 children from JK to grade 12 gone. Now imagine how these students feel watching this, knowing that they could have been there then and their own teachers that they look up to who wouldn't have cared or done anything about it. There is not a single person in our community who hasn't lost a loved one or known someone who's lost someone. We are a community in mourning, but not even given the dignity to do so. We've seen hundreds of students across school in the Waterloo region mobilize their peers to make a stance up to their administration's silence on the genocide being perpetrated by the hands of Israel with the complicity of their very own government and their leaders. We've seen the bravery of students across schools standing up and making their voices known. They have mobilized themselves in multiple demonstrations like school walkouts or Kufiyya days to show their support to the Palestinian people to get their administration's attention on the genocide in Palestine and their complicity in their silence. Instead of these students being commended for their bravery, instead of them being met with understanding and support from their administration and teachers, they have been repeatedly intimidated, censored, and surveilled by their very people they're supposed to trust. The mobilization of these students is being led by students of all backgrounds, religions, and ethnicities. Because you don't have to be Palestinian to stand against the injustice, you just have to be human. Palestinian students have been seeing their land and people be destroyed in front of their very eyes. It's their right to take a stand in their everyday environment, like their schools, to play a part in bringing much needed awareness of these ongoing genocide in Palestine for the last 75 years. Alongside their peers, they have effectively brought to light the genocide in Gaza, and their admin continues to ignore it. Our role as PYM is to support youth and support students and give them the tools to organize their peers and provide that support for them to lean on as the right of every student. We have been awed and amazed by their dedication and the strength of the students in this region, something that should be encouraged and highlighted to all of the students, but this is not the reaction they have received. And from our involvement with these students, we have witnessed firsthand that outrageous level of censorship, intimidation, and anti-Palestinian racism by their very own teachers and admin. This behavior is not only an infringement of their rights as students, but also a catapult of these students feeling extremely mentally unwell in school spaces. The once familiar environments have now grown to be filled with fear and distrust. We must rebuild the trust and work on creating a learning environment that students can feel safe in and that students can go at times like these. Students are learning and seeing these issues both in their local context as well as the global, and we must have an environment for them that does not stifle their feelings but helps them develop. School leadership and must collaborate with trusted organizations that have been heavily involved in the community, like the Palestinian Youth Movement and like Independent Jewish Voices, to help build and restore impacted learning environments. We must implement on-the-ground training for staff on anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia to prevent the continuing unsafe environment for Palestinian students and those who express pro-Palestinian sentiments and how that influences the disciplinary action. School environment should be a place of learning and growth. The advocacy work of these students should not be punished but encouraged. They are building themselves to be the strong initiative group of students that we all want them to be. Their development in this work should be celebrated. We should all be proud of the people they have grown up to be. You should be proud of the students in your region. They are standing up to the status quo and mobilizing their peers for a cause most important to them. A cause entrenched in the very issues you teach and taught them about in these classrooms. An issue trenched in colonial violence, imperialism, and racism. With Canada's past and present crimes committed against the Indigenous people of Turtle Island, it is not only our duty but our responsibility to learn from it and to showcase the students of this region, not just through words but through tangible actions, that we stand on the right side of history and not to repeat the same mistakes again. We mustn't come back here decades later to apologize for misjudgments and complicity in yet another genocide. We know the board doesn't have a problem making statements about global issues, as in 2022, this very region put out a statement in support of Ukraine. Why is Palestine any different? We urge you to confront your biases and use your power to not only protect the rights of your students from surveillance, censorship, and racism, but also to tackle any anti-Palestinian racism at the admin and teacher level. Provide them with services to help them learn and change their ideas as well. We must make the change now, and it is your responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you for your delegation. Trustees, are there any questions of clarification? Okay. Seeing none, thank you again. Janah El-Batroukh.
Hello, everyone. My name is Janah El-Batroukh, and I am a grade 11 student of the WRDSB. I am very proud of my Palestinian background, and I am also very active in my school community. And most of the time, those two things cannot simultaneously exist. Last year, I made a post for my school's MSA about Al-Nakba, a day dedicated to commemorate the 750,000 Palestinians who were forcibly displaced and honor those who were killed by British and Israeli forces. I was then pulled out of my class, sent to the office, and stayed there for more than 2.5 hours without a parent trying to convince the school administration and teacher sponsor that Palestinian students deserve the right to commemorate the people who have been lost to this catastrophe, especially that our grandfathers and our grandmothers experienced firsthand. I also made a post for my school's BSU about the history of Black and Palestinian solidarity, which has yet to be posted because the protocols keep changing. At first, we could only post educational or promotional things. I expressed that this is purely educational and does not push any sort of political agenda. They said that we have to follow what the board advises us. I informed them that board members I have contacted are familiar with the post and said it should not be a problem to post. For the third time, they changed their policy to say that it might put students in danger. They said that the principal is having conversations among other principals in the board, and this is what they decided. It is clear that the school administration is making excuses and pushing their own beliefs and political agenda onto students and their clubs. In November, I made a Kufiya Day post. Again, that post was not allowed to be posted until the day before the event and until I had yet another meeting with my principals. On that day, I was taken down to the office by the VP herself in front of my friends and peers for putting a boycott Israeli apartheid sticker on a Coca-Cola vending machine. She then laughed at me when I said that I might be targeted. My parents were not called or informed until I requested it myself. I had to stay in the office for, again, more than 2 hours while my fellow classmates saw me in the office as if I had done something wrong. When my dad came and we had a meeting with the principals, they told me that because of the sticker, it might make students feel unsafe, and had told me that I had to go home for the remainder of the day, as well as the following Monday. My dad, sister, and I were all trying to explain that if I am sent home, it shows my teachers, administration, and other students that I am a threat to others, and that I had done something wrong, which would result in me being a target and me being unsafe in school. We expressed that criticizing a government does not mean criticizing a community, and that this school, its clubs, and students have criticized many governments without being sent down to the office or being sent home. No matter what we said, they insisted that I have to be sent home and can only be allowed into school if I have yet another meeting, a back to school interview with the principals. In October, I made a Prayers for Palestine post for my school's MSA, which was taken down because of the sentence, "Pray for our brothers and sisters in Palestine from Israeli aggression against Gaza and the West Bank." Again, I had to have 2 meetings with my principals, which resulted in the VP being the new MSA teacher sponsor so she can monitor all of our posts. The extra surveillance and censorship only pushes to oppress us more. My administration comes to me each time there is a complaint rather than taking the steps to ensure my safety. It is never a student that comes up to me and asks questions or complains, but rather a teacher who is only looking to silence me. Now, when I'm walking in the halls, there are teachers who give me dirty looks and make me feel as if I am, as a person, am wrong. My peers are now talking about me and how I was taken down to the office and sent home. I don't feel supported or comfortable by my school's administration or teachers. I was penalized and targeted for expressing myself. Again and again, I am told that my actions may lead to students feeling unsafe, which led me to question, why? Why would an Instagram post catering towards Palestinian and their allies be a danger to others? Why would a post that celebrates Palestine and its rich culture and history be dangerous to others? Is it because that is what the people complaining about feeling unsafe from these posts believe towards Palestinians and their cause? If so, why does our administration continue to protect these associations and stereotypes? Again and again, I have to convince the office that I am not a threat to other students and that any other student who criticizes the government is free to do so and encouraged to express their beliefs until that comes to Palestine and so-called Israel. It is important to remember that there is a distinction between the Israeli government and the Jewish community. When we talk about the atrocities happening to Palestinians, we are referring to the actions of the government and not the general Jewish community. Organizations like Independent Jewish Voices for Peace and the United Nations stated that Israel has apartheid laws and speak up against the Israeli government. We can all live in harmony together, but we need to speak up when one is being oppressed. Palestinians who are not in Gaza and the West Bank, like myself, feel extreme guilt for having basic human necessities when their people are being killed in front of their eyes. Palestinian students are just trying to do what they can to stand up for their people, and being humiliated, censored, and made to feel like their existence is controversial or wrong is physically and mentally exhausting. It is not good for our well-being as students that we have to convince people of our pain, specifically teachers and administration, and that we deserve to have a voice and to exist. Speaking in November to the board members made me feel seen and connected to the staff. All I hope for is that my administration and teachers in our schools will mirror the way the board acted. Unfortunately, my experience is not unique, so I would like to use the remainder of my time to read statements from other Palestinian and allied students. Student number 1. During my grade 10 history class, we were ending the unit about World War II. My history teacher made a comment along the lines of Jewish people fled to a land with no people. As a Palestinian, I was shocked by the statement, as this land with no people was my homeland, Palestine, and my grandfather's home, and my family lived there for generations. My parents were forced to be refugees during that time. My friend raised her hand and asked about why she said that and how that was inaccurate. I add in saying that us as Palestinians have always lived there, and in fact, we welcome the Jews to seek refuge in Palestine. She goes to change the topic and says, if I believe so, I can take an upper year course. Later in the semester, in one of our online meetings, she says that she says the same thing. Having someone not hear what we had to say the first time, I realized They were trying to forget my people and my heritage. From a biased teacher's perspective that kept talking about how her heart is broken due to her family going through the Holocaust, when in fact many ethnicities were affected by the Holocaust. Also, Arabs in Palestine who were under the British colony at that time fought for the Jews' right to self-determination in life. Many Jews that are generations of Holocaust survivors say never again and not in my name. You can see how I would feel hostility from the teacher when I was taught of Palestine and the Holy Land to be a place for all religions to live harmoniously. But my teacher is telling me I am too young to hold an opinion and brushed off quite harshly for speaking up. Situations like these, I expect a history teacher to be more neutral and fair when retelling stories. I took history to learn from it, not to be disregarded or erased. Student number 2. I am Egyptian Canadian, and I am a proud Muslim. I want to share with you today to express that I am deeply troubled by the rise of anti-Palestinian racism in our educational institutions, from the denial of Palestinian identity and rights to the constant dehumanization by mainstream media. This dangerous form of discrimination has impacted the safety and well-being and educational experience of Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslim students, as well as other students of color. I want to highlight how such racism extends to excluding their perspectives, dehumanizing Palestinians and their allies, and refusing to acknowledge historical truths such as the Nakba. The main purpose of school boards is to ensure that schools foster an environment which focuses on advocating for a future in which all students, regardless of their background, can openly share their experience without fear. More specifically, you must ensure that all students, parents, and staff members are able to express and embrace their identities within our educational institutions and feel safe and validated to do so, without fear that their stories and identities will be politicized. Picture a student privileged enough to receive an education in one of your classrooms, expected to perform academically and actively participate despite the ongoing genocide of their nation. This student who continues to show up to school is not given the chance to grieve openly. Instead, they must mask their emotions behind a facade deemed necessary by your school board. Why? Because it is too political, too controversial, because it is too complicated? As I express these concerns, I cannot help but question, how, as a nation that preaches equality and multiculturalism, do we find ourselves sitting back, enabling the silence of a grieving community? How does an entire school board allow hate and discrimination against a grieving minority while continually teaching those exact equality and inclusion principles in their schools? These principles and values need to be reflected in your behavior, regulations, and methods of instruction, not just in textbooks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your delegation. Trustees, are there any questions of clarification? Thank you. Sarah Shafiq?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Sarah Shafiq. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Research with the Coalition of Muslim Women. So CMW has a hate reporting service that documents cases and provides one-on-one support to victims of hate. For this presentation, our focus will be on anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab racism, and Islamophobia. We have documented a significant increase in reports of anti-Palestinian racism in the Waterloo Region District School Board since past October. We have received 18 formal cases since October, whereas we would receive around 2 cases a month for school-related incidents. This is a disturbing trend, and we are deeply concerned about students' right to be in a safe, harassment-free, racism-free environment in the school system. School boards' equity and inclusion policies protect the students and are designed for students to bring their whole selves into their school spaces, to celebrate who they are, to acknowledge and honor their histories. But for some reasons, these policies are not being applied to the Palestinian students. And we have heard just now, these identities are impacting students' well-being, their mental health. One prominent aspect we would like to share is the issue of fear of reprisal faced by the students. When they document the anti-Palestinian racism to us, they detail the incidents to us, but many would not share the name of the teacher or the course, even with us, stating that they're scared of being penalized. This power differential between teachers, admin, and students has to be taken into account. Racism coming from some teachers and staff is deeply concerning. Students are afraid to be who they are and face intimidation from their school's admin, including teachers, to express their identities. In our report, students are concerned about surveillance and censorship, like we've heard from these brave students right now. 2 weeks ago, I was at a national conference organized by NCCM, National Council of Canadian Muslims, and this concern was heard from Muslim Arab leaders from all over Canada. So unfortunately, this is not the school board's issue. It is a issue concerning all students all over Canada. Just looking at hate crime statistics outside of our region, Toronto police reported that the number of Islamophobic or anti-Palestinian hate crimes documented from October 7 to October 20th represents a 1,600% increase compared to that time frame last year in 2022. So to this end, we ask for the following. Policy has to be responsive to the current climate, and anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, Islamophobic racism has to be named. The board has to acknowledge the unfolding situation and respond proactively. Policy has to address the deep concerning issues of censorship and surveillance that we've just heard. This cannot be accepted in an educational institution. Anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia have to be, again, named and addressed in staff trainings, and these trainings have to be made mandatory. Systems need to be in place to monitor how these trainings are being manifested in the classrooms. When a case of racism is recorded, racism by a teacher is recorded, how is it handled? What corrective supervision steps are taken? How are unions involved in issues of racism generally and anti-Palestinian racism, Islamophobia specifically? Waterloo Region District School Board leadership has done so much to support racialized students and made accommodations, and there's a whole list of that work. But the frontline staff, they're the ones who need training and accountability. We call on the board to address these issues with the urgency that it deserves, and as many students are not feeling safe, and this is not acceptable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Trustees, are there any questions of clarification? Okay, if you could come back. Trustee Estoesta, question of clarification?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you so much for all the work that the Coalition of Muslim Women does. Would we be able to have even a redacted version of the report and the statistics that you shared? Because I think that's a valuable number for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because I think that'd be something that'd be fantastic. And then does, in the reporting tool or in other ways that you've gathered that feedback, are there other ways of showcasing that work in a way that is representative of the experiences without, again, dealing with the anonymity that those respondents wanted to have when they shared that information with you?
Ms. Shafiq?
Yeah, that, I mean, we don't have a formal report as yet. We can, maybe some ad hoc version can be, we can pull out some numbers as in and share it publicly. In terms of specific incidences and experiences, I think, you know, some of the cases and experiences that have been shared, I think they are reflective of what we have. We won't be, at this point, we won't be able to, I think, share the exact details and of those. Yeah.
Thank you.
Follow-up? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for your delegation. Rania Wendy? She's not here? Okay. Lauren Weinberg. Oh, if you could just, one moment, Ms. Rydell's going to pull up your presentation.
Sorry.
My name is Lauren Weinberg, and I'm here tonight as a WRDSB parent. My two children attend public school in Waterloo, and I'm also here as a Jew and the co-founder of the local chapter of Independent Jewish Voices, an anti-Zionist Canadian Jewish organization founded in 2008 that advocates for human rights and equality for all in Palestine, Israel. Last November, I attended a meeting that school board staff hosted with Palestinian WRDSB students who described how they've been censored and surveilled and how their family history is denied by some teachers and administrators. I would never want that to happen to my children. So as a parent, I was devastated to hear that these children were being harmed instead of supported at school. The censorship, surveillance, and erasure they experienced would always be unacceptable, but it's especially upsetting to know these things are happening when these students are dealing with so much grief and trauma because of the violence in Gaza. I'm complicit in this situation because the censorship, surveillance, and erasure is usually excused as opposing anti-Semitism. I'm here as a Jew to say this attitude is misguided and wrong. Next slide, please. The next couple of slides I will show demonstrate that I'm not the only Jew who feels this way. Independent Jewish Voices has chapters all over Canada who've been protesting the Israeli government's actions continuously since October 7th. Here are members of the Toronto chapter occupying Union Station with another Jewish anti-Zionist organization, If Not Now. In the United States, the anti-Zionist organization Jewish Voice for Peace, founded in 1996, has also gathered thousands of Jews in protests across the country since October 7th. This specifically Jewish protest at the US Capitol drew 5,000 people. This is a photo of the group Rabbis for Ceasefire protesting in the UN Security Council chamber in January 2024. Thousands of Jews, including rabbis, are protesting the violence in Gaza because anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. And like anyone with a conscience, we consider it immoral to murder tens of thousands of people. In the few days since I submitted these slides, the death toll has risen to more than 28,000 people, of which more than 12,000 are children. It's slandering the WRDSB's Jewish students and staff to claim that all Jews condone the Israeli government's actions. Judaism is a religion or an ethnicity. Zionism, the belief that Israel should be a Jewish ethno-state, is an ideology. It is not an obligation for observant Jews. It is a settler colonial movement, and there have been Jewish anti-Zionists for as long as Zionism has existed, since the 19th century. I was brought up in a Zionist household and synagogue, which encouraged me to support Israel by literally hiding the truth about how many Palestinians the Israeli government has murdered or driven from their homes over the past 75 years and more, just as Canada and the United States have tried to suppress the truth about how they were founded on genocide and ethnic cleansing. I did not learn how Palestinians, whether they live in Gaza, the West Bank, or Israel itself, are denied basic rights until I was an adult, and now I live with a lot of regret and shame because of my years as a Zionist. I know this school board can give my children a better education than I received. It has already been teaching them to be more tolerant, compassionate people. When Palestinian students are censored and surveilled and their experiences are erased, they are not the only ones who suffer. All of the students and staff who would benefit from hearing their perspectives are harmed as well. Most Jews are not Israeli. We do not live in Israel, and our ancestors came from Eastern Europe, Spain, Yemen, or other parts of the world. But there are even anti-Zionists in Israel. This is Tal Mitnick, a young Jewish Israeli who spent a couple of months in prison since October 7th for refusing to join the IOF. In an interview with The Guardian, Mitnick said, "I don't see myself as the hero or anything while people are being massacred every day in Gaza. And I want to stress, I'm by no means the only one. There are other anti-occupation activists, people opting to not join the army, peace campaigners young and old. The Palestinians I have met in Waterloo region are well aware of this. I've now been to several pro-Palestine rallies in Kitchener and Waterloo, and I have not heard a single speaker or seen a single sign mention Jews or even Israelis. I have only seen criticism of the Israeli and Canadian governments. That is not anti-Semitism. What's anti-Semitic is conflating Jews in Israel. and especially in Waterloo region, which according to the 2016 census had fewer than 1,200 Jews, or 0.2% of the population. Most Zionists aren't even Jewish. They're Christian fundamentalists who believe in the rapture. Telling Palestinian students and staff that they cannot be their authentic selves at school because of the Jews won't help my kids. It will only sow mistrust between two marginalized communities who should be supporting each other. I appreciate the board's concern for Jewish students and staff who should be safe in school, even if their numbers are small, but they are not the ones most at risk right now. Since October 7th, anti-Palestinian racism has resulted in the murder of a 6-year-old American boy, the attempted murders of 3 students pictured here, and many other acts of violence in the US and Canada. Over the past decade, at least 10 Muslim Canadians have been murdered in hate crimes, and although Islamophobia is not the same as anti-Palestinian racism, they are inseparable. The white supremacists who perpetrated this violence share the same beliefs as the people who leave swastika graffiti all over Waterloo region and use anti-Semitic terms like globalists and cultural Marxism. They are the ones endangering my fellow Jews, and they are the only ones with something to lose if your Palestinian students and staff feel safe.
Thank you. Trustees, are there any questions of clarification? Oh, sorry. Trustee Piatkowski?
I actually had a motion. I wanted to refer the concerns of all 6 delegates and staff and ask for a report by the end of March on how the board is ensuring that all students and staff who feel impacted by the conflict.
Just 1 second.
I wanted to wait until we'd heard from everyone.
Okay. The topic is on the agenda under school-based human rights. So the next agenda item. So if you could hold your motion till then, but if you want to refer the delegates to staff, you can do that now. So right now we're just at refer to staff for
Okay, then
follow-up.
I'll do that.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I didn't recognize the topic.
Okay. It will be included in that one.
Okay. In that case, that we refer the concerns of all 6 delegates to staff.
Okay. And is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Trustee Estoesta. Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay. All in favor? Okay. And that's unanimous. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your delegation. Okay, we are moving on to staff follow-up, which is the board improvement plan update school-based human rights, sorry. Associate Director Miller.
Through the chair to trustees, and just before we get to our response, I also want to thank the delegates tonight and for bringing forward the experiences that you've had, how difficult they were to talk about, and the courage it took to share those with us tonight. For us as an organization, we do commit to learning and growing in our work. We are committed and dedicated to doing better and ensuring our students all feel a sense of belonging and inclusion in their schools and could feel safe. So thank you for that tonight. And what we're about to talk about and share, and Superintendent Hill will do so in a minute, we'll share the work that we're doing as an intersectional human rights approach and looking at it in a manner that we cover all of the Ontario human rights protected grounds through that work, highlighting specific identities and specific cultures and races as she goes through the work tonight. Also, this is in response and is embedded within our board improvement and action plan, which further shows our commitment to this continued work of both our students and staff feeling that they belong and work in a school board that values who they are and the identity that they come to and bring to their work each and every day. So with that, I'll pass things over to Superintendent Hill to share our response. Thank you.
Superintendent Hill.
Thank you, Associate Director Miller, and through the chair. So I recognize that this is a topic that I could probably take up the rest of the board meeting, identifying the things that we do as a school board to support building a human rights culture. I am going to highlight, which means I'm not going to be able to cover every initiative we do, but I hope I'll be able to touch upon some of the things we are doing to build a human rights culture within our board. Starting first within creating a general human rights culture, we engage in mandatory human rights training for all WRDSB employees. The human rights branch of the organization is beginning a cycle of providing Leading for Change, which is an equity-based leadership training for all administrators. They're beginning their cycle with newly appointed administrators and will move along to experienced administrators once that cycle is finished. We have engaged in human rights training in partnership with the Education Equity Secretariat for all members of the senior team and our union partners, as well as some of the trustees sitting around this table, understanding and believing that a human rights approach has to permeate every level of the organization. It is standard practice within the board to share information and resources, including days of significance, links to curriculum resources, information for administrators, all staff notices, and messages to support conversations with students and colleagues, including students affected by global and traumatic events. We do provide learning opportunities to our staff to help them embed a culturally relevant and responsive pedagogical approach into their teaching in service of all of our intersectional student identities. We curate on the IHR department, the Indigenous Equity and Human Rights Department. We curate an extensive internal website that houses equity and identity affirming resources for staff to use in their classrooms to support student learning engagement and learning opportunities. We also provide student affinity spaces and groups for any student group that asks in any schools. This work is supported by central staff that actively engage to build capacity among our school leaders to be able to support these environments for our students. We provide protocols and tools, including guidelines and FAQs to address word harms such as racial slurs, epithets, tropes, and stereotypes. And for example, our racial slurs and epithets guidelines or our direct tool. We have identified sovereignty and equity affirming and equity leadership competencies for system leaders to ensure that our current and aspiring leaders are acquiring the skills to lead in identity affirming ways. We also provide resources to staff to talk about trauma-informed practices to help speak about global conflicts, displacement, experiences of social identity, and oppression. We provide staff affinity groups for our staff that are impacted by global events or who need spaces to feel safe and affirmed in their identities. And we include, for example, ACBI staff, Muslim staff, Jewish, 2S LGBTQIA, Indigenous, Sikh, Asian, and neurodiverse employees. Our new teacher induction program supporting teachers new to the profession and recently out of the faculty is provided with a full day of training on equity and sovereignty affirming classroom practices. We also offer a Roots and Wings symposium every year for teachers and administrators, designed by teachers and administrators to focus on dismantling barriers and building inclusive classrooms. I'll go on to specific examples for many of our identities. And again, I do warn this is not an exhaustive list. We do support and recognize Holocaust Remembrance Day, providing resources to teachers about the impact of the Holocaust on a wide range of people, as well as to help combat anti-Semitism. Our secondary schools participate in the Yad Vashem Holocaust poster project at secondary schools, and we work with Simon Adler to rotate those posters around our secondary school sites. We recognize Jewish Heritage Month in May, and we'll be celebrating Jewish heritage with students together to be able to provide culturally affirming, identity affirming activities for students. We are supporting changes to the grade 6 social studies curriculum to include the mandatory learning about the Holocaust through professional learning and other identity affirming changes coming to the curriculum in other areas as well that you may have heard about recently. We have provided as well to combat Islamophobia, a recognition of January 29th as the National Day of Remembrance and Action Against Islamophobia, including the provision of resources for classrooms. We've hired a system navigator with a specific focus on serving Muslim students and families and helping us determine ways to dismantle barriers to success that those students face. We celebrate October as Islamic Heritage Month, including, themes and sharing of resources, and have celebrated an Islamic Heritage Day, providing an opportunity for students to gather and highlight the richness of Muslim cultures across the globe. We have intentionally framed our school year this year to be mindful of the timing of Eid and to provide a professional learning day for staff on that day so students can enjoy celebrating at home. We do recognize Pride Month in June of each year to combat 2S LGBTQIA hate and provide that human rights affirming experience. We participate in the OK to Be Me student conference hosted by Camino Wellbeing. We support gender and sexuality alliances in all secondary schools and many of our elementary schools, as is outlined in the Education Act. We curate resources to support awareness of and learning about the range of gender identities and sexualities under the 2S LGBTQIA+ umbrella. And we recognize Transgender Awareness Week and Transgender Day of Remembrance as well. In order to combat anti-Black racism, we recognize Black History Month in February of every year. We do have an ongoing initiative called Black Brilliance, where we celebrate Black brilliance and Black joy across the school year. We've recently curated a Black History Month book recommendations sorted by panel audience for all schools. We're engaging in a multi-year Dismantling Anti-Black Racism professional learning series for school teams to ensure that staff deeply understand and can disrupt the disproportionalities experienced by members of our ACBI communities. We engage system navigators to bridge the gap between ACBI communities, students, families, and the school system. Our Black Brilliance events this year include our first ever Black Brilliance Conference for elementary students being co-hosted by Wilfrid Laurier University. We're engaging specifically in a Dismantling Anti-Black Racism kindergarten project, recognizing the impact of early experiences of schooling on ACBI students and their families. In order to combat anti-Indigenous racism, we do recognize Indigenous History Month in June. We have engaged in 2 years of professional learning to help transition all of our schools to contemporary First Nation, Métis, and Inuit voices to replace the standard English. And to support the achievement of the calls to action of the TRC. We do support an additional qualification subsidy for educators looking to expand their capacity to teach Indigenous focused content and learning expectations, and to do so in respectful ways. We're also providing specific professional learning for teachers of French immersion related to Indigenous content this year. In order to combat ableism, we will be hosting the 2024 Building Community Advancing Anti-Ableism in Education Symposium. This is our first one-day event, which will take place during National Accessibility Week. We provide ongoing professional learning for central staff on ableism and its impacts. We are supporting a shift from withdrawal-based support models to a tiered intervention that keeps more students in our classrooms, and are working to build system awareness around the need to limit curriculum modifications to those within grade level to ensure efforts to close learning gaps for all students. So in classrooms and around the board, we seek opportunities to have teachers move beyond single events or days of recognition to embed learning experiences that reflect the rich diversity of our students and families into the center of student learning. We honor the efforts that educators make every day to provide students with activities and resources connected to the curriculum that reflect the identities and lived experiences of our students, and the teachers' ongoing commitment to continue to grow in their capacity to do so. That would be a smattering. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Superintendent Hill. Is that it? Okay. Trustees, are there any questions on the report? Trustee Radlein?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Hill, for that almost exhaustive description of board initiatives. So what I'm hearing is that there is a lot of training opportunities and initiatives in the board to help bring our staff and students to a point of understanding and a point of acceptance. I'm wondering if there's any process in place to measure the effectiveness of this training. Do we have any means of knowing what the impact of this training is on staff? Is it, you know, are we improving, staying the same, getting worse?
Superintendent Hill?
Through to the chair to respond to the trustee's question. We do make it a regular part of our training opportunities to collect feedback from the staff who participate in these training opportunities, including their feelings of confidence and competence to address some of these situations in their classroom. And again, we do collect student achievement data, and through our sorry, I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head, but our student MDI surveys, which help us to measure well-being in classrooms. And you've heard Dr. Lieberman talk in the board about how we've collected lots of baseline data through our student census. and through our MDI, and we are looking to see improvements over time.
Follow up?
Yes, thank you. So we heard a number of concerns tonight. So, so feedback is saying that some things are getting better. So how are students made aware of reporting protocol? How do they know, for example, about the system navigator for Muslim students? How are students made aware of how to report concerns such as we heard tonight?
Superintendent Hill, do you want to take that, or Ms. Alawalia? Okay.
Thank you for the question through the chair. We understand that despite all the incredible work that Superintendent Hill has shared with us this evening, students continue to experience discrimination and harassment. And when that happens, we do have a process in place for them to be able to have those concerns addressed. In December of 2023, so just a short few months ago, we did send an email directly into the inboxes of all of our students from grade 7 and up to better understand the process that they can undertake should they experience discrimination or harassment, or if they should experience a violation of our human rights policy and other policies that we have on our board, which includes, speaking to your administrator, and if you're not able to do that, you're welcome to speak to a superintendent, and at any time through the process, anyone is able to reach out to the Human Rights Branch, and we're happy to walk them through the process and answer questions that they might have. And also in some cases, we're able to do an investigation if the situation warrants that.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Piatkowski?
Thank you. This is the first received report that I was going to ask for March. Okay. So that's quite incredible. I'm very pleased to hear all of the structures and mechanisms that are in place. Like Trustee Radlein, I think we're aware, we've been made aware tonight, and we've heard from others that sometimes we fall short. And I'm pleased that those complaint processes are in place. I think that we might need to do a better job to ensure that all students, staff, families, and caregivers are aware of these tools if they believe that they've suffered discrimination and that they exercise their rights under these processes. So I'm hopeful that we continue to make sure that people are aware of these.
Thank you. Trustee Johnson, did you have your hand up, or I wasn't sure?
Actually, yes, I did.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure that you saw.
Yep.
Thank you. Again, thank you very much to Superintendent for your report. I'm certain you could go on for a long time, and I am very, very impressed and pleased to see with how hard our board is working in terms of equity measures. And if you want to, the presentations tonight are echoing in my heart and soul as we talk about this, and they're continuing to echo in my thoughts in my mind. I guess one thing I'm kind of wondering in terms of students having a way to report and talk about things that are happening, is this we talk about contacting the human rights people, but also we have an anonymous bullying reporting tool. I just looked it up, hadn't seen it in a while, and I was wondering if that would be is that a good opportunity to use that tool in terms of getting feedback from the students and as to what their experience is like in school, so they can at least report it and not anonymously if they want to, directly to board staff. I'm not sure. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Superintendent Lemon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to respond to the trustee question, yes, in fact, the anonymous bullying reporting tool would be another opportunity for students and families to report concerns regarding a multitude of behaviors, but there are categories listed within the tool that allow them to select different types of what they've encountered. In addition, there's an open text response that allows for them to describe the incident and really provide any other information to that might be helpful to administrators in getting to the root cause.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you to the chair. Could you flesh out for us just a little bit more? It's been a while since we talked about this tool, and I think it's actually really important to remind us all again. What does that look at the back end? So if a student or a family member goes to the tool, goes to the site, reports, can you give everybody a little bit of insight as to how that then the information gets relayed then from the education center staff and how it gets dispersed?
Superintendent Lemon?
Through the chair to respond to the trustee question, to take you through the steps of it, once a report is submitted, 3 members of staff are notified of the report. We then have a staff member that, where possible, where the school's been identified, then is able to make the administrator a reviewer of the report. So now they have access to the report, and we notify them that a report has been submitted. We support administrators through the process of their response, often giving them guidance in terms of investigation and follow-up. And then through the tool, we refer to them as the reporter. The reporter is also given updates if they want to re-engage with the platform. They are given updates to the status of the case. Sometimes they are invited to provide more information if the report was initially vague or not actionable. And then we typically engage school-based processes to support both where possible the reporter, but also to address the behavior if the administrator is able to.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Lemon. Trustee Waseem?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. So thank you, Superintendent Hill, for this update. Very helpful to hear the level of training and cultural competency and events and awareness that we have within our board. My question to you is, given what we were hearing from some of the delegates earlier around, reporting instances of discrimination or harassment in schools, it's clearly a very student-driven process. The onus is on often the person experiencing the discrimination themselves, and taking into the context that often folks are experiencing immense levels of trauma. What is being done at this time, if you have a response to this, to ensure that principals or teachers who may not feel comfortable addressing these instances themselves have an escalation pathway?
Superintendent Hill?
Through the chair to respond to the trustee's question, in addition to all of these initiatives, programs, and trainings we support, there is also a generic email address through which teaching staff and administrators can request support from the Indigenous Equity and Human Rights Department at any time. These requests are taken in and received by 3 individuals within the department, and then triaged and responded to in time. So if there is a concern with a specific situation, or there is a matter that an administrator doesn't feel they're equipped to address, they can reach out through that email address, and somebody will respond to them and support them through that situation specifically. And it could be that sometimes we learn about a thing, and acting upon it and activating and applying that knowledge is for the first time or the first few times something we don't feel confident about. And so the team members in the IEHR will receive those emails and then provide the support in a gradual release of responsibility model to build that confidence for that administrator to be able to effectively address situations within their school environments.
Follow up, Trustee Waseem?
Yes, thank you. So what I'm hearing is that there is capacity building in place to ensure that as we're receiving reports like this, there is, support for staff who are on the front lines. Just given what you just shared, I also heard today that a lot of these concerns were relating surveillance of certain students, and their voices. Where would you say our staff capacity building is at with respect to addressing instances of surveillance when there's a power dynamic between students and their teachers or perhaps their principals?
Superintendent Hill?
Through the chair to respond to the trustee, I would say that work is ongoing. We are a large system and learning happens for individuals at different speeds and in different ways. We have addressed the topic of being overly surveilled with reference to other of our student communities in the past, and it's the ability to pull out this learning and apply it in different scenarios that we need to do now. And so this work is always ongoing, and we talk about it never being finished. We do collect data and trends from the requests that come into our department as well, so that that can inform where we need to go next, and we can be responsive to what's happening in the system. So I wouldn't say we are nearly finished, but I would say the work is ongoing.
Thank you. Trustee Estoesta?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The CAFIA came up a few times tonight, and so I was wondering if you could speak to how the human rights culture impacts the dress code, and if there is guidance on cultural and ethnic clothing.
Superintendent Hill?
Through the chair to respond to the trustee's question, this came to our attention before the winter break. And so this was a piece of communication that we had already sent to school administrators, that there would be no policing of students choosing to wear the keffiyeh, and it was in line with policy 6000, which was recently redrafted and passed by this board and shared with schools, and that wearing the keffiyeh was in line with the student dress code policy, and that reminder was sent to all schools.
Follow up?
Thank you. You also mentioned the trauma response team for global conflicts. I was wondering if you could just expand a little bit about what that team entails and how they work with our staff when there are global conflicts that are occurring.
Superintendent Hill?
Sorry for the miscommunication. It's not a team. It's a series of guidelines that is permanently housed on the website that proposes for staff when there is an experience of global conflict or a global traumatic event of the best ways and resources to help talk to students about these events in trauma-informed ways.
Trustee Watson?
Thank you. So my question has to do with, through you to staff, the baseline data and trends through our census. I'm just wondering when that information will come to the board in the form of the report. I guess, no.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So, I remember receiving information about the census, and there was lots of information about it for students and things that they were experiencing, and Superintendent Hill had talked about the baseline data and the trends and also the census information. So I wondered when that information will be coming to the board.
So that's the student census with the MDI survey, when the next report will come back?
Yeah, so
Associate Director Miller?
Yeah, through the chair to trustees, we have, and when we did complete the student census, all of that data, as it was spoken to by the trustee, was shared of just the various identities, the populations within our school board, and so on, of those who participated, which I believe was upwards of about 36,000 of our students. In addition to that, the MDI, or the Safe, Caring, and Inclusive School Survey, we will be providing that again this spring for our students, and that's from grade 4 to grade 12, and then we will be sharing back that data with trustees as well.
Okay, follow up?
Yes. And again, this might be a separate question, but it's a follow-up to the email, I guess, sent out about harassment. And I just wondered, is that sent to every single student regarding harassment?
Ms. Alawalia?
Through the chair, this was our first time sending out an email like this. It was sent to all students in grade 7 and up, and that would have taken place around December 10th, which is Human Rights Day.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to know, will we receive the information?
what information?
Well, just the data or, trends or documentation.
So that's what Associate Director Miller spoke to for the MDI, and that was.
So they're
going to-
both connected?
No, one was information for students about where they could go and if they had concerns and how they could access the Human Rights Department. And that was sent out December 10th. And what Associate Director Miller was speaking to was the MDI survey, Safe and Caring, Inclusive Schools survey, that's done every 2-3 years, I forget.
We do it, yeah, by every 2 years.
Every 2 years, and the next one will go in the spring.
So I have a separate question.
Okay, I'll come back to you then. Okay, Trustee Waseem?
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. Just a question regarding the email support system that's set up for administrators. If administrators don't reach out through that channel of communication, does the team that's behind that tool, do they ever reach out to the school directly and communicate with them? How does that process work if the school isn't reaching out?
Superintendent Hill?
Through the chair to respond to the trustee's question, it's not only administrators that can access that email address, it's also teaching staff or other support staff as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an administrator. In terms of schools being reached out, we have identified Indigenous and equity leads at each school who are conduits to us to share information. But if they don't reach out for specific support, then we just continue to provide our more broad-based offered trainings. And we wouldn't know that there would be any specific issue that the school needs support with unless somebody at the school is reaching out outside of our general offered trainings.
Follow-up, Trustee Waseem?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. So I want to get a sense of how well utilized this resource is, especially if we're building it up and it's existed. So is there a report of how many times that email communication is used, how many times we receive outreach from schools for this?
Superintendent Hill?
Through the chair to respond to the trustee's question, I don't have up-to-date statistics, but I can tell you it is used hundreds upon hundreds of times a year.
Okay.
Thank you. Trustee Watson?
So through you to staff. So my question has to do with, do we get any harassment information? So that would be through you to staff. Do we get any stats or any sort of information or trends having to do with harassment?
Ms. Ahluwalia?
Through the chair. Also in December, we launched our first annual Human Rights Branch annual report. And in that report, it highlighted the number of complaints we would have received in the previous school year, as well as the nature of those complaints based on the code protected grounds and how those were resolved.
And we received a report on that. I recall looking at it on the website. I can't remember the date of that though. Yeah. Follow-up, Trustee Watson?
I guess, and so that would be on the website. Is that on the website? Do we get a public report at all? Like, are we willing?
We got one here in December. It was December that you presented it, correct? Ms. Ahluwalia? Yes.
Okay, I'll review it.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Estoesta?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was also experiences that were shared tonight from a staff perspective of being unsupported. And I'm wondering for those staff members who are feeling unsupported, what mechanisms do we have in place, both anonymous and named, that they can go to for support?
Ms. Ahluwalia?
Through the chair to answer the question. Any staff can reach out to the Human Rights Branch through our request for support form or through our incident complaint form. And links to those forms are available on the website, the public website, as well as our staff intranet site.
Okay, follow up.
And do they have to go through that process named, or is there any anonymous submissions that they can also go through that process?
Ms. Ahluwalia?
Typically, when people reach out, it is not in an anonymous format, but we let the person who's reaching out to us know that our conversations are confidential.
Associate Director Shantz?
Through the chair to trustees, I'd also like to point out that all staff have association or union representation. That is another opportunity for them to gain additional support, as well as the human resources and equity services processes that exist.
Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you Superintendent Hill and Associate Director Miller for the report about the ongoing work that we're doing to ensure staff and students are feeling safe and respected in our schools. And it's good to hear that staff are continually trying to be open and grow so that we can keep doing better for our students and for our staff. So thank you for that tonight. Okay, we are moving on through the agenda and we are moving to Board Policy 2003, which is on Folio 1. Trustee Woodcock, it's over to you to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, the report is as presented and the proposed changes to the policy are in the included in the report, and I would move that the Waterloo Region District School Board approve Board Policy 2003, Early Learning and Childcare, as presented at this meeting, committee, the whole meeting.
Okay, would somebody like to second that so we can discuss? Seconded by Trustee Johnson. Are there any questions on this policy? It's 2003, starting on Folio 3. Seeing none, could I ask for all in favor of moving the motion? And that's unanimous. Okay, thank you.